Year's 1982. Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan has just come out or been made. We are producers looking at a rough cut of the film, and we are going to fix it, as hard as that may be. Cue the intro.
All right, welcome everybody to the Mirror Movie Universe podcast. I'm Nate, one half of this particular shindig, and across the island, across the country from me is Dan. Say hello, Dan.
Hey, everybody. He's the evil one because he has a goatee.
Yeah, that's why we didn't establish this in the other episodes, but this is why it's called Mirror Movie Universe. I alluded to this, but Dan and I have a lot of years as brothers between us, and we disagree about a lot, but obviously the biggest difference between us is that he is clean shaven and I have a beard. And as we all know from old Star Trek Mirror Universe schlocky stuff, the evil Spock has a goatee, just like mine. I think that really informed the fashion choice for my face, Dan. I saw that as a kid and I was like, yeah, I want that. So yeah. As Dan alluded to in the intro, today we're talking about Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. Now, this is not Dan's favorite Star Trek. I almost said episode. It's not Dan's favorite Star Trek movie. It's my favorite Star Trek movie. I love Wrath of Khan to death. But before we talk about what we love and what we fix about it, we got to talk about what actually happens in Wrath of Khan. So Wrath of Khan is a departure from the Star Trek the Motion Picture-esque way of doing things. We talked about this in our motion picture episode, but Wrath of Khan starts presenting Starfleet as a more militaristic organization, and starts presenting the entire thing as more of like an international waters navy kind of thing, like an old British Navy controlling the world kind of thing, which for better or worse, adds some different tone to the film. You got Kirk and crew going out into the universe on an adventure once again, but this time they are beset by Khan Noonien Singh, who was an episode villain in an episode of the original episode. Who was a villain in the
in an episode of the original series.
Very good, Dan. Thank you very much. I cannot enunciate today. But he is played by Ricardo Montalban, one of the better villains from the original series, I think. And he's been stranded in his ship, the Botany Bay, on SETI Alpha 6 or something like that. And he captures Chekhov and a new crew member whose name escapes me. I don't recall.
I want to say Captain Terrell, but I'm going to look it up.
Okay.
So Chekhov is the first officer to this captain.
Yes. On a Miranda-class starship, which Khan then takes over and starts to wreak all sorts of havoc. An old flame of Captain Kirk is running this research institute with a younger man named David, who we later find out is related to Kirk. And at this research institute, off on the side, they're developing this thing called the Genesis device, which can terraform a planet almost instantly into a place that is full of life and livable and breathable for living things. Khan is very interested in the destructive power of this technology and starts to take it over and baits Kirk into an old revenge rematch kind of thing, traps Kirk in this facility, and makes off before Spock rescues Kirk, and they have a final showdown, which results in the death of my favorite original series character, Spock. And the film ends with them shooting Spock's casket off in a torpedo and landing on the planet. And it's quite beautiful. I think that Wrath of Khan is the perfect Star Trek film, despite some flaws, but I love it to death. Dan, what do you love about Wrath of Khan?
Okay, so first of all, I love that it's very different from the motion picture. It is less of a sequel to the motion picture than it is a sequel to a television episode that was made like 14 years prior, which is insane. I love so much about this movie. It is not my favorite, but there's a lot of good here. There's a lot of character work, which we don't see in a lot of Star Trek films. You see them grappling with getting older and struggling to kind of come to terms with that. You see the Kobayashi Maru for the first time as an opening here, which is really, really great. also kind of as a departure from what Star Trek was, you see that kind of body horror stuff with the worm that goes into the ear that really
Yeah.
creeped me out when
Yeah.
I was a kid.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like,
I had
ugh.
nightmares about that for years. Yeah.
Um, you've got some great moments in here. Ricardo Montalban is great at chewing the scenery and
Mhm.
everything. The best parts of this film, though, is the ending, like you said.
Mhm.
Spock's death when he's in the part of the engine room that they can't get to with the reactor in it, and he does the, you have always been and always shall be my friend, is so heart-wrenching. And then they do something incredible here, which is that they really double down on that. A lot of times when a character dies, it's just move on to the next scene.
Mhm.
But the funeral scene, I think, even has more emotional impact when Kirk is there and he says, of all the souls that I've met in all my travels, his was the most. And he like starts to like kind of lose it. And then
Mhm.
he says human.
Yeah.
That's so powerful. Shatner does such a good job with it. It's so good.
Yeah.
The character moments in this are just phenomenal. Like
Mhm.
that whole thing, if Spock didn't die in this movie, it would not be this good.
No.
Okay. Like it wouldn't be even close to this good. That whole emotional resonance is phenomenal in it. The actor who plays Captain Terrell is fantastic. They
Mhm.
bring in Kirstie Alley to play Lieutenant Savick. She does a good job with that as well.
But does
Um,
not stay on as Lieutenant Savick for the
no, she does not. And
next
actually,
two
I know that a
movies.
lot of people think whatever. We can talk about it next episode. I like Robin Curtis. I really do. She's
Mhm.
great as the replacement. Anyway,
Okay.
what do you like about this film?
Okay, so the stuff that you've already listed, the worms are terrified me as a kid, and I love the concept of them now. I Star Trek does a great job with making things terrifying that like take over your person. That's also why the Borg are scary. Like you lose
Mm-hmm.
all faculty and control of yourself, and that's why they're scary. It's not just that they get into your ears. Like that freaked me out as a kid, but that's what scares me now. Um, the Kobayashi Maru is a great opening, but it's also great theming throughout the movie
Yeah.
because there's that little conversation between Savick and Kirk later where she's like, "Oh, how did you win?" And he's like, "Oh, I cheated." And he's like, "Oh, I don't like to lose." And but that's another thing about Wrath of Khan is that a lot of it becomes what is great about other Star Trek films later on.
Yeah.
The Kobayashi Maru comes back and is played for comedy in the J.J. Abrams stuff. It's mentioned a couple of times in other series, I think, but it's a great concept. The idea that Ricardo Montalban is quoting, I think it's Melville or I think it's Moby Dick. During his final thing, he's like, "From hell's heart, I stab at thee. With my last breath, I spit at thee," or something like that. And that's great. And Star Trek Six just copied it. You got a Klingon battlecruiser leader dude played by Christopher Plummer who's quoting Shakespeare, and that's great stuff. Ironically, Picard never gets a villain like that. He never gets an intellectually scary equal. Um, that's something that's kind of surprising for Picard. He gets like his younger clone who's like, "I'm the same as you," but he's not really. They just kind of say that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Something that someone else pointed out about Wrath of Khan that I have to steal. A YouTuber named Steve Shives pointed this out is that Kirk and Khan they never fist fight in this movie.
That's
Like
true. They
and
never
they
share the screen together. Yeah.
no, and I think that that's a brilliant bit of work. There is a movie called Master and Commander, which is about old British naval stuff, and I alluded to this in my summary of the film. This is very much just an emulation of ye olde like ship sailing, like we're the British and we're going to sail around the Cape of Good Hope and fight the French. And reminds me a lot of that movie. And the commanders in those movies never see each other either, and it informs the uniform and all of this stuff. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, that's not Star Trek. It's not like the hopeful. It's very militaristic." But Gene Roddenberry was a huge fan of this series of books called Horatio Hornblower, which
Mm-hmm.
was an old naval timey book series. I've never read it,
It's
but
what
it's
informed the character of Captain Picard. Yeah.
yes. And Wrath of Khan very much takes that and runs with it, and this whole stylistic stuff. I think it's great. And then my last little thing is that it established a continuity. It threw out motion pictures continuity
Right.
for good reason. But before Spock dies, they took the time to film and put into Wrath of Khan the little remember when he touches McCoy's face.
Yes.
They don't make that up when Search for Spock is made. They don't like, oh, this
Yes.
happened. Did you not see it? It's a very clear, like, hey, this, you know, this existed in the last movie. You can go back and watch it. They didn't just add it in later. And it establishes, and like you said, I think when we recorded our Voyage Home episode, it establishes it's the start of this trilogy, right in the middle.
Yes, very
of
much.
the Star Trek films, and I love it. Those that's what I love about Wrath of Khan. That's why I think it's the best Star Trek movie. But you don't, and I think that if you could fix something about it, it would be your Star Trek, you know, favorite of all time. So, what would you fix up about Wrath of Khan?
Yeah. Okay. So here's a couple of things that bother me about it, and I genuinely love it. It comes from a place of love. Tiny little thing. And it's kind of unfixable, but I want to mention it anyway. When Ricardo Montalban meets Walter Koenig, and he says, "Chekhov, I remember you. I never forget a face." Chekhov wasn't in the episode.
Yeah.
Genuinely wasn't there, didn't come in until the next season of the show. So my original thing was like, oh, maybe I could switch Chekhov and Sulu throughout the whole movie, give Sulu a little bit more to do. He's a first officer. It kind of sets up everything that's going to happen with the Excelsior. But I think that's too hard to do. It's too hard to go back and reshoot it all and do all of that kind of stuff. As I said before, this is a sequel to a television episode. I don't even think it's the best, like, top 10 of the original series episodes.
No,
it's fine. It's not amazing to me. It's not like, it doesn't stand out that much. Nicholas Meyer, who came in and kind of took over for Gene Roddenberry here as the director and writer, was kind of going through episodes, found one and was like, hey, cool, I'm going to use this. And went with it. That's a lot to ask of your audience. It's 1982. The original episode aired in 66. Huge gap of time without streaming, without DVD, without any way to go back and watch it. I mean, VHS was in its infancy here. There's not really a way to remember. And it's relying on the audience to know that from the outset, which is a lot. And I remember watching this movie a long time ago, and I was so confused. And I asked my dad, like, who's Khan? And he's like, oh, you've seen that episode. That's very much like our dad. He's just like, oh, yeah.
It's like,
oh, I was like, no, I haven't. I don't know.
Yeah,
like,
because I don't think we had Space Seed, the original episode, because we had the same like 20 to 30 episodes on tape,
and
TV.
it wasn't one of them. Yeah. I didn't see it until years later. It's like streaming. Like, I saw Wrath of Khan probably like a dozen times before I ever saw the Space Seed episode. So I think that what this movie needs, and I'm not trying to like belittle the audience or say that they're not smart enough to remember anything, but it needs some kind of an introduction. 5 minutes of a recap of that from the beginning. Get the rights to it. If you don't have the rights, whatever, just edit that episode to a 5-minute thing. Star date, blah 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 blah, 0.5, blah blah blah. I'm doing this, and then it ends with Khan getting marooned, and it says like 20 years later. There needs to be something to remember that, because like, I remember watching this movie, I remember being scared, and I remember feeling like so dumb. And that's not a fun feeling as an audience member, to feel dumb about something and be like, wait, what am I missing here? Why don't I understand this the way that I'm supposed to understand it? So put some kind of an intro there. I mean, you can do whatever you want with it, make it like, last time on Star Trek, the original series, whatever. But have it play over the credits. Do something at the beginning to make people remember this, so that at least if they never saw that episode, they'll have an idea of it. And if they did see the episode and it was 13 years ago and they haven't seen it since on rerun or whatever, their memory is jogged.
Okay. I see why. So I agree with why you think this is a good idea, but I don't agree that it's a good idea. So Um, yeah, I was also very confused as a kid, and I also
Sure.
felt dumb because out of the tapes we had like, a pretty decent spread of Star Trek episodes. We had recorded like 4 times the episode where they go to a gangster planet.
Yeah.
And because I know that episode by heart. It's like, oh yeah, dude, the Federation will come back
Fizban.
and take a piece of their action. Fizbin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know the rules of Fizbin by heart, but I don't remember Space Seed as a kid because I never saw it, and I was very confused. But Star Trek gets very, Star Trek is good at a lot of things. Star Trek is bad at last time on blah blah blah. I don't know how long it's been since you watched the first episode of Deep Space Nine, but I tried to bring someone through Deep Space Nine a couple of years ago, and Deep Space Nine opens with a text crawl, no narration, a text crawl of on Stardate blah blah blah, Wolf 359 battle. Captain Jean-Luc Picard was doing this, blah, blah, blah. And then they have a little scene where Sisko's wife dies. And that's all you get, a text crawl. And I think
Hey,
Voyager,
Star Wars did it, man. Like, why not?
Star
Do you know
Wars
what?
Is big
I'm
and
gonna
epic,
change mine.
but,
Star Trek
okay.
2: The Wrath of Khan. Bah, ba, ba, da, and then
You get a
it calls
text.
up. And Stardate, blah, blah, blah. There was a genetically engineered human on the Botany Bay, and Kirk's historian on the ship ran off with them.
Okay. Well, it's what you have to. Well, okay. So I get it because Star Wars Episode 4 pulled that off. Like the prequels hadn't been made yet, and George Lucas had some like general ideas, and so it did kind of get the audience to like understand what's going on, who the good guys and bad guys are. That's yeah. You can't do it like Deep Space Nine and Voyager though, because seriously, like if you and the Star Wars crawls go very slow and they're very epic. Deep Space Nine crawl is like on blah blah blah, this happened, and then this happened, and then this person did this, and there, and it's like okay, like I went to go take a leak at the beginning of the episode and I missed it. Like it's yeah. So as long as you don't fall into the pitfalls that Star Trek falls into, recapping stuff,
yeah,
you're fine.
I mean, I get it. It's hard to do, especially because the footage is old. Right, the footage is old. The originals. How do you do it? Do you cut it up? Do you
have the wrong aspect ratio and everything? Yeah.
I mean, it's tough to do. I fully get that. It'll be hard to pull off. What's your fix?
Okay, so God, it like it was hard pulling something out of my hat for this because I love everything about this movie. Every little bit from beginning to end I think is placed and paced very well. How they defeat Khan, they use his own arrogance against him, and he has a lack of two-dimensional thinking, and Spock saves the ship and engineering, and Kirk has his own moments and everything. And even Chekhov has he's in peril, and Sulu is driving the ship away from the big Genesis thing, and like people have their own moments. Scotty doesn't do much. Scotty's just the miracle worker in the background, and doesn't have much agency or isn't in much peril. His character is not very interesting. He's all like he's not really a character. He also has my least favorite line in the whole thing, or maybe my least favorite delivery of a line in the whole thing, which is when Kirk is like, "Oh, he'll die if we don't take him out," and Scotty is like, "He's dead already." Like he's very mean about it for no reason. So I don't think that Scotty's character is handled that well. How to fix that? Mostly, get him off of Enterprise for most of the movie. And this is one thing that I like about J.J. Abrams movies is that in the first one you don't meet Simon Pegg's Scotty, who's by the way wonderful. I love Simon Pegg's Scotty. You don't meet his Scotty until later in the film, and so they're like having a bunch of engineering problems on the ship, and you're like, well, who's going to fix this? And then you run into the character who's a genius and quite eccentric and fun, who can fix all the stuff. So in the beginning of the movie, have Scotty not be on the Enterprise. Have him working on Genesis with Dr. Marcus, and have him doing stuff with that, and then have him join the Enterprise crew later. All you need to do is shoot a couple of inserts of beaming Scotty up off the thing, and be like, where is he? In the beginning, and cut out some scenes. It's a bigger edit than some of my other fixes. but you got to do something with Scotty's character because he's got nothing to do. He's the guy on the other end of the phone when you say, I need warp speed in 3 minutes or we're all dead.
Yeah.
That's it.
I feel like Scotty, I agree with you. His character doesn't get a lot to do here. And really, like, his big moment for me is when the young ensign, I think his name is like Pete or something.
Oh,
Peter,
he dies. Yeah.
he dies, and Scotty like carries his body to the bridge
Yeah.
weirdly, like, which seems crazy. And like he's just some random ensign as far as we know. Like, there's no relation to Scotty. There's no reason for him to be that emotional. He's seen a ton of red shirts die before, and he
Yeah.
like just opens the door and he's like, he's dead.
Yeah.
It's a lot. I mean, if I was going to do anything with Scotty, I'd give him some kind of a background as to why that guy was so important to him. Is that,
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to steal your motion picture, but is it his nephew? Like,
Yeah.
why?
Yeah.
I don't know. I
You
agree
get,
with you though. I like it. Do something more with Scotty. I'm on board with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
do something more or do something less, but make it make sense because he's just window dressing in Wrath of Khan. And he's not my favorite character out of the bunch. That's Spock. But he's the engineer. Give the engineer something to do, damn it. I'd fix something with Scotty. And it's either give him more or give him less. But the way he is now, he's the one blemish on this film, I think. And you got to do something about it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? Were you confused when you saw Wrath of Khan? Did you know Space Seed? Were you on board with all of that? Do you think that Scotty has a lot to do here? Not a lot to do? We want to hear from you. Who's right? Who's wrong? Do you like them both? Sound off. Like, comment, subscribe, all that bull crap, as
Yeah.
always.
And if you were the director of this film, which one of the producers on this call would you listen to and actually, implement that change? If you were Nicholas Meyer, what would you do? Scotty Fix is more expensive, but I don't know. I think Dan's is more feasible. So, yeah, tell us what you think.
Let us know. As always,
yeah.
thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.
And we'll see you next time.